What I'm going to be talking about today is characteristics of a Shakespearean tragedy, and since we haven't really discussed this, I'm going to introduce to you some of the main characteristics, and you can find kind of an elaborate version of what I gave to you on the handout. Okay, the first big thing that a tragedy starts out with is the hero, who is usually the main character that's in the tragedy. And this hero is usually of nobility, of a higher class. So this person of nobility, as he's going along through the tragedy, he usually has a tragic flaw or a fatal flaw. That's very important when thinking of a Shakespearean tragedy. This fatal flaw is also known as hamartia. And as we go along, it's a pretty fancy word, and I guess, throughout papers you may write or something that you could always put that in there as a little, hey, I know what I'm talking about kind of thing. So the fatal flaw is usually what brings upon the hero's downfall. And the downfall can be something like excessive pride, which is usually pretty important, it can be found a lot in Shakespearean tragedies, and it is known as hubris. And that's just an example of a fatal flaw. And once this hero has gone through his downfall, this usually excites or brings that emotion from the crowd, and this is known as catharsis. And catharsis usually deals with pity and fear. The audience having pity for the hero who, is of this high class, and he's gone through this major ordeal, and he's fallen and is in trouble, and fear because they believe that something like that could actually happen to them. So catharsis is really important when dealing with a Shakespearean tragedy. And basically, I just want to give you all a little example of how, like, the cycle of tragedy. I mean, basically the way to think about this is that there's good, and then there's evil, and then there's chaos, and then once the chaos has happened, there's usually a death of someone, which tragedy, and that's where the tragic elements come in. And then after the death, there is the reassertion of good. And the way that this reassertion of good occurs is that the hero, he kind of recognizes his tragic flaw. So basically, once he recognizes, that he has done wrong, or he has felt a certain way that was wrong, then that's kind of where the good comes back into play. So, has anyone read any Shakespearean tragedies before? Any examples? Okay, Andrew?
Hamlet.
Okay.
Richard III.
Romeo and Juliet.
Anyone else?
I read one, but I don't remember.
You don't remember?
What, Midsummer Night's Eve?
Well, that's a comedy.
That is a comedy, actually.
Comedy.
And a comedy is the other type of work that Shakespeare...
Othello.
Othello.
And Macbeth.
Othello is actually one that I was going to kind of bring up, not really go in depth with, but Othello is about, he was known as Othello the Moor, and he was a big-time guy in the Venetian army, I believe, and there was a war going on, and then he married Desdemona. But throughout the play, there is an evil character named Iago, and he's upset because Othello has chosen Michael Cassio to be his lieutenant instead of Iago. And Iago kind of just feels like he's been kind of tricked out of the position he felt he deserved. So Iago leads Othello to believe that Desdemona has been unfaithful with Michael Cassio. And so basically, the downfall, the tragic flaw of Othello would be, that he's believed Iago, like all these untrue things that Iago's saying. And then, Othello kind of kills Desdemona, strangles her. And then right after he strangles her, he's like, he finds out that, she wasn't being unfaithful, and so he kills himself. So he realizes, that he realizes his tragic flaw, and he corrects it, and I guess he feels that he has to kill himself to, feel better about killing his wife. So, I'm glad that y'all knew some examples. Is there anyone that can kind of tell me what a tragic flaw is in their own words? What they believe a tragic flaw to be, or maybe an example?
A flaw that leads to the downfall of the hero.
Okay.
An Achilles heel, if you will.
Yeah.
I have a question.
What's your question?
Okay. It's the thought that I'm thinking about is not a book or anything, but I was wondering, do you think like the writers of the Disney movies, like, do you think they based that off Shakespeare?
Yes.
Because it sounds the same way.
Hamlet, I believe, is based off, they based one of the Lion Kings off of Hamlet. I mean, like, they just take these Disney movies, I guess, and they pull from, like, big works of art and make it into something that kids would enjoy, but it also has, like, a deeper meaning. Disney movies always have a deeper meaning.
So it's kind of teaching kids Shakespeare a little bit.
I mean, definitely, if you would like to point out to your child, hey, this isn't just lions and meerkats and whatnot running around, you could say, oh, this is from the play Hamlet or something, and because it is, Lion King is a tragedy. There's, the good and then the death and then the reassertion with Simba coming back to the rock. So, yeah, that's definitely true.
So the reassertion doesn't have to involve the tragic hero per se.
It usually does, because the hero has to realize his tragic flaw for the good to occur, but the hero may not necessarily survive through his downfall.
So the ones like Cinderella, Snow White, Ariel, like then, okay, yeah, they started is this good person, like for instance, Ariel, and she was so focused on trying to be on part of another world, she gave up something that she had, which gave her a tragic event because she couldn't be with her in her his primary world.
Yeah, that would be a good example. And usually when the hero or the main character decides that they want to do something that is out of the ordinary or whatever, it not only affects them, but it also affects the world that they're living in. And so that could definitely be a good example. So, any more questions? Thank you.